Hey guys, it's Rich, and this is the first video of the Witchy Book Club series. This week, and for the next 17 more weeks, we're going to be going through the Inner Temple of Witchcraft. I want to do this in a video per week. I'm going to try to keep the videos kind of relatively short. If you ever read a book with me where I'm actually studying the book, not just reading this for pleasure? If I was reading this for pleasure, there would be probably zero notes to it. And yes, I have notes galore. Not written in the book because I don't do that. I know some of you out there are totally ones that will mark up a book all over the place and highlight and underline and write in the margins and everything. And while I think that's perfectly valid for most people, I'm a purist for books, and I don't do that. Instead, I handwrite my notes. I think I'm going to forego the handwriting of notes and just start typing them out, which brings me to my next point. If you would like to see the longer version of my breakdown of each chapter, go ahead and click in the bottom bar. I will have a link to Christo-Paganism.com. I'm going to have a thread on there called Book Club or Witchy Book Club, and you can see all of that stuff there. So, yeah, I think that's all I had for that. So, Inner Temple Witchcraft, if you don't have this book, you can go ahead and get a copy. You can, click off this video for now, or you can just stand by and, study along with us even though you don't have the material. You can find this on Amazon very easily. You can find this at most witchy bookstores. You can find this at a lot of the bigger bookstores like Barnes & Noble, or I don't even know, is Borders, is Borders even around anymore? I used to love Borders. Anyway, this is the 7th printing edition, or first edition, 7th printing that I have. It was copyrighted 2002, so that gives you a time frame of whenever it was first published, and it was published under Llewellyn. So this is the beginning in the series of the Temple of Witchcraft series. So, a little bit about the author. I do like Christopher Penczak's work as far as a writer. I have not really studied under him. I haven't really studied many of the nuances of his work and picked it apart and all that. But everything that he's written that I've read so far, I can appreciate, if not just generally enjoy reading and learn a lot from. He does go into a lot of detail whenever he writes, and sometimes it's a little over my head at first, and I have to sit there and just meditate on it, just think on it, ruminate, chew on it. And from the back of the book here, it says Christopher Penczak, and it says in New Hampshire. I believe he's moved to Massachusetts since this. Teaches classes throughout the New England on witchcraft, meditation, Reiki, crystals, and shamanic journey. He is the author of the City Magic and Spirit Allies, and writes for several local and national metaphysical magazines. So, this also does have a companion CD. I have the CD somewhere. I haven't really used the CD as much. A lot of Christopher Penczak's work I actually use more as a reference than as a read-through. And so for that fact alone, I have not gotten through any one of his books all the way through, because I usually find what I need in one of his books. I will write that down, and then I will go about what I was about to do. So there's certainly many parts of his books that I have not read. So, and I am also a bookmarker. I will mark books with little slips of paper usually. A lot of times I keep, let me just take that one out of there so I don't get confused. But a lot of times what I will do is I will put little slips of paper all over or sticky notes, and that'll tell me, hey, either I left off there or there was something that I needed to take notes on. If you saw my copy of Solitary Witch by Silver Ravenwolf, that one has sticky notes all throughout it. I usually use, whenever I use bookmarks for the reading purpose, I usually use tarot cards. And a lot of times it'll be the tarot card, like the first card, like the title cards. Sorry, if you can't tell, I'm in a hotel room. I am down in Dover right now. I start my military weekend. Well, this is Friday night. I do my military weekend on Saturday and Sunday, and then I go home Sunday night. So, yeah, I just got down here. It was like an hour and 45-minute drive for me. So, yeah, I'm a little tired. My head's a little spacey and whatnot. And yeah, I've had a full day. I cleaned the house and whatnot, but we're not here to talk about my day today. This isn't just a regular vlog. This is a book club, damn it. So I did take notes on this chapter 1, which we are starting at. I didn't want to do one on the introduction because, well, if you really want me to do one on the introduction, great. But probably not going to. I really just don't feel like doing introduction ones. But anyway, if you guys really want it, I will do one on the introduction. So, first chapter is Ask a Witch. So, I do have my notes here. Like I said, I am one that I write notes. So, this is my note. These are my notes for chapter 2, but my notes for chapter 1 are at home. And yeah, since I already have them written out, and I will be posting this on Christo-Paganism.com, and again, link will be below. I'm only going to touch on parts that I really want to share in this video. I don't want to just read to you all of my notes, and if you guys want further expansion on stuff, I can either talk to you guys in the comment section below, or you can see if I put something extra on it at Christo-Paganism.com. So anyway, getting into this, like, 8 minutes after, or whatever it is. Yeah. So basically, the first chapter starts like many witchy books. This is the beginning in a series of books. So I kind of expected that. I have this thing whenever it comes to witchy books, like, they all seem to say the same thing in the very beginning. And I kind of appreciate that, because that gives a person that has no understanding, no knowledge of witchcraft, it gives them a first step into the practice. And they'll also go over terms and history and stuff like that. And he started going over terms in this chapter. And I appreciate that, because one person's terminology does not always reflect another person's terminology. So this gives us a baseline, a good foundation of where we're going from here. So right off the bat, he starts asking some questions. I think this is on page 8, I believe it is. He starts asking the questions: why call yourself a witch? What does it mean to you? And do you call yourself a witch? And I also pose these questions to you because for me, why I call myself a witch, it's not really as much a situation of wanting to reclaim the word or take away the stigma of it. Of course, that's a underlying reason, down in the depths. I kind of like bring more truth and more awareness to the word witch itself. But for me, I don't like labels. Labels are for soup cans. The reason I picked the label of Christo-Pagan is because it is the label that most suits me. Why I call myself a witch is because of the same reason. It is the label that most, suits me and what I do. So what does it mean to me? The word witch has no negative connotations for me anymore. Whenever I was younger, yes, it certainly did, because we all grew up with witches are bad. And then now we have shows like Charmed and all that I grew up watching, and I started thinking, oh, okay, witches aren't all bad. But a lot of the depictions that we see of witches in media are evil, or portrayed as the protagonist, or the antagonist, the bad guy. Anyway, I can't remember. Antagonist, right? Somebody in the comments will correct me. Thank you. So, and do I call myself a witch? Yes. These are my answers, and I have reasons for each. Again, calling myself a witch, I call myself a witch because it most suits me in my practice. If there is ever a better term that I should go by or could go by, and it would be more suiting, that would give people a better understanding of what I do, then I would go with that. But as far as right here, right now, witch seems to be the best term for me in my practice. Okay. And again, what does it mean for me? For me, it means a magical practitioner, somebody who deals in witchcraft, somebody who is constantly changing the energies around them, whether by manipulating them through their own will or through the spell work that is working in the background. And I'm sure we'll go into those details much further into the book. Now, on page 8, at the very bottom of the page, I think it was, yes, okay, he does say, witches can be both men and women, or women and men. I'm a man, I identify as a witch. Male witches are not called warlocks. The word warlock can be traced back from Scottish, Old English, Germanic, and Indo-European roots, and is now generally regarded to mean deceiver or oathbreaker to those involved in the craft. Such a title was probably associated with witchcraft by those who wanted to defame the practice. Okay, from what I've heard, most likely the term warlock, being an oathbreaker, was one given to men by the church. And the oath that they were breaking was to God. Now, the reason that they would call men oathbreakers and not women is because back in that time, in the patriarchal society, women weren't as, or they weren't seen as being as in control of their oath and not breaking their oath. So I do have some concern with that terminology. That one, for me, as a lover of history, does not really, it fits more expanding on it and seeing what the oath actually was. So for me, it's more of look back at the history a little bit more and go into a little bit more detail as to why there was a term warlock. So I do like that he touches on that. However, I wish that there was a little bit more given in that explanation as to why many people don't use the term warlock. It's a totally valid term. If you want to call yourself a warlock, you're a warlock. I personally don't. Just because there is so much stigma around it. Now, there are people out there who are trying to reclaim that term. And yeah. And that is totally a valid way of doing that. Just like people are reclaiming the word witch. For me, it's not as much as about proclaiming to reclaim. It's proclaiming in order to label myself accurately, or as accurately as possible. I wrote a little bit more about this on the blog, and I'm trying to move right along because I still have to edit this down and get it up by tomorrow. And I don't want to have like an hour long video. If you guys want long videos on this, great. Then let me know by leaving a comment below. If you like little snippets, maybe about 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, let me know if you'd rather have that. So anyway, I want to move on to page 10, where I sort of disagree that witchcraft is a religion. And let's see. He says, one of the first definitions I learned from my early teachers trained in the Cabot tradition was witchcraft is an art, science, and religion. Okay. So I do agree that science and art are a part of witchcraft. I have no issues with that. And it could be argued that witchcraft is part of a religious practice, or could be considered a religion if it's something you do religiously. But witchcraft is not necessarily a religion in and of itself. So I do have a little gripe on that. That's my gripe and complaint. If you disagree with me, okay. If you do agree with me, okay. This is a book club. We're studying together and trying to pose questions to one another. So, and give our own opinions either way. So go ahead and, disagree with me or agree with me, and, let me know why. Now, I can agree that witchcraft is considered an art. If you consider an art as expression of oneself, as I do, then it would be perfectly logical for witchcraft to be considered an art or a type of art. Looking further into art as it is, we have chants, poetry, songs, etc. that are commonly used during ritual. So those parts of art are going into witchcraft itself. I can even argue that excluding such parts from a ritual and having a minimized ritual is still a form of artwork. And so you can either have a form of artwork with a lot of different type of artwork in it, or if you minimize and you scale back and you express yourself in a way of minimalism, and that is your ritual, that is still art. So yes, I can see it as art. Even if you are sitting there and meditating, and meditation is your ritual, your form of ritual, meditating and envisioning whatever it is that you envision. If you do a guided meditation, maybe you envision going into a field and you're, picking a flower, or you're soaking in the sun, or anything of that sort. Your creation of the world that you are in within your meditative state is a form of artwork. It is a creation of a world all your own that is in itself an expression of you. So, yes, I would definitely say that witchcraft is art, or art is witchcraft. Maybe both. Page 11, where I have a little conflict with the stating that witchcraft is part of an old religion. The witchcraft that he is, I believe, referring to here is Wicca in general. And I'm not going to reread through this, but I'm pretty sure he was talking on Wicca. And I do have an issue with people saying that Wicca is an old religion. Wicca is not an old religion. Wicca is fairly new. It is based in an old religion. So I have problems more with the language of it than I do of the concept of it. So I try not to nitpick, and it does come out, and that's one of the, hopefully the last times that I will actually do that. And I even put it in my notes. This is going to seem like nitpicking. I have issues with overarching generalizations and blanket statements of absolutes. I have lots of issues with those. So I do have a high level of scrutiny whenever I go and start reading a text like this and treating it as a sacred text, as I'm doing in this series. So, and if any of you have not watched Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, I do want to give them a plug. It's a podcast, and yeah, if you're not listening to that, you can find it on iTunes and all that. If you're not listening to that, it's treating Harry Potter as a sacred text, and it's phenomenal. You should definitely go check it out. And that's really what I want to try to do with this book, is I want to treat it as a sacred text. Not because, I'm putting Christopher Penzek up there on a pedestal and he's so great and fantastic and magnificent, which, Mr. Penzek, if you're watching this, totally think you are. However, I don't want to put him up on a pedestal of being this greater than thou type of figure, but I want to read the text as if it is a sacred text and treat it in that manner of, learning and receiving inspiration from, discovering parts of myself with it, and discovering parts of the rest of the world within it. So within these pages is knowledge, and I'm bound and determined to, shake it out of there, wring it out of there, and all that stuff. So yeah, bound and determined to do it. So whenever I treat something as a sacred text, I do come at it with a lot of scrutiny, and I don't really want to do that too much because I think I lose the forest through the trees type thing. So let's go ahead and move on. One of the major points that I want to point out is that not all witches are polytheistic. This is an important one because in my early practice, there were many people that, who's your goddess? Well, I don't have a goddess. I didn't need a goddess, didn't want a goddess at that time, didn't feel like I needed a goddess at that time. And a lot of people didn't really get that in the pagan community. They didn't really agree with me on that not all witches are polytheistic. And I think that's something to point out, that if you are not a polytheist, it's okay. In fact, there are atheist pagans out there who deal with the archetypal energies of certain deity figures. So I think that saying that witches are polytheists, one equals another, it can get us into some hot water. So I'd like to stick away from that and point that out that I do not agree with that part. So let's move on to page 11. Well, we're already at page 11, at the bottom of page 11, where it speaks on energies. Masculine and feminine energies is something I resonated with early in my practice and still do now. The author does a good job of describing aspects of the god and goddess, as well as how the god and goddess of Wicca can expand into pantheons. So I do like this, and I kind of want to read part of this. Witches focus on divinity in the form of male and female energies, gods and goddesses. The prime focus of many traditions is the Great Mother, the primal creative goddess, as embodied by the planet Earth. The goddess is also seen in the moon, the night, and the oceans. She is portrayed in the modern craft as a triple goddess, one who is three in her aspects of maiden, mother, and crone. These faces correspond with the changes in the moon and seasons. The goddess's energy is vast, portrayed as loving, kind, and life-giving at certain times, while dark, warrior-like, and vengeful at others. So I do like that, and I think it's important to focus on the energies and what they are associated with whenever it comes to male and female energies, especially whenever more and more people are identifying as gender fluid or non-binary. So I think whenever we talk of male and female energies, we're talking of a system that has been around before these thought concepts of non-binary were around. My view is energy is energy. The way that I know an energy is male or female for me is by what side of the body it comes on. I am right hand dominant, and I identify as a male, and ever since I started my practice, male energy is always right hand. Female is always left hand, receptive and projecting. So that's how my brain works, and that's how I learned. And even though I can feel energy with both hands very easily, if there's a spirit that comes to me and I feel them on this side of my body, I know they're a female. If I feel them over here, I know that they're a male. So that's just me and how my brain works. And I don't know if that helps any. Anyway, I don't want to get on to a big tangent about about binary, non-binary culture and what energies identify with what. To me, it's all energy. I'm not going to get into a big tangent about projective and receptive energies and whether it is indicative of a masculine or feminine aspect or anything like that. So I'm just gonna swiftly move on and just avoid that whole argument. Anyway, moving on, he does at the bottom of page 12 give Carl Jung. He brings up Carl Jung's work, and I don't know if we see more of his more of Carl Jung's name in this book, but I think giving Carl Jung credit of the archetypes and whatnot, I think that is vitally needed. You can't talk of archetypes and not mention Carl Jung's name. So the notes I have here, I think it's important to bring up Carl Jung's work in archetypes. I'm glad that it is included here, and the work of Carl Jung is one that cannot be ignored when talking about gods and goddesses. Many soft polytheists work with archetypal energies and much of the philosophies of tarot can be linked to Jung's work. So I'm glad that it makes an appearance in the very first chapter of this book. So do enjoy that. And then I have us going back a few paragraphs because I'm dumb like that. So anyway, he brings up the diamond analogy. So, and then he comes back to it on page 13 as well. So the diamond analogy, if you're not familiar, and I did a video on this in the past, is where you have different facets of, the way I like to think of it is a crystal. You have different facets of a crystal, and you focus on one facet and maybe missing the entire crystal, losing the forest through the tree. I like the way that he puts this in here because it is not demeaning, and it's actually quite poetic. Most mainstream religions, particularly the Judeo-Christian traditions, are monotheistic, acknowledging only one God, theirs. Some feel these traditions focused on the masculine vibration of the divine and saw it as the one and only source of life. In our diamond analogy, they are looking at the brilliance of the whole diamond, but are blinded to look at the individual facets. Or are they fascinated by one facet of the diamond, one God, and excludes all else? The spiritual ancestors of modern witches were in a position that seems unique to us today. Because of their polytheistic nature, they could recognize the gods of another tribe, land, or culture as different expressions of their own gods. They could see the diamond as a whole, as well as the individual facets. As we look at the Great Spirit at the center of the diamond, witches remember that we too are facets of the diamond, like the trees, oceans, and animals. We are expressions of the divine, the goddess, the god, the Great Spirit. So I think that paragraph is wonderfully written. Wow. It is an impactful paragraph, and I think he kind of hit it right on the head, that sometimes you miss or you say that to somebody, there's only one way to do this, or there's only one God, or there's only my deities, and there's no others. I only worship the true ones. And sometimes we focus on that one facet of the crystal, of the diamond, and we don't see that this is all part of something huge. And, you know, other people are just focusing on their facet, and it's okay. So I've seen this in Christians. I've been one of those Christians. And I've also seen this in some pagans who are staunch pagans. And they say there's only one way to do or to view something. And sometimes we get into arguments over, the right way to do something. And you can see this in the horrible the horrible discussions out there, the little witchy wars out there. Is it an athame or a thame, or just a ritual blade? The gosh damn knife. That. Yeah. See? Took out all the arguments of it. I call it personally an athame. If you call it a thame, I'm going to say you're wrong, but you do you. It still works for you, right? Okay. But that's just me. And I'm one of those people that I get weird whenever it comes to words, if they're mispronounced. So, yeah. Sometimes, and I'm not perfect, and sometimes we just need to sit there and say, hey, I disagree, but that's okay. Cool with it. Anyway, moving swiftly on before I get into too much trouble with myself here. He does touch on the healer aspect. And I've never really resonated with the term healer. That's never been something I've ever really been called to be, is a healer. So that's not something that's ever really hit me as a term to use for myself. I don't know herbs and oils and all that to be, in Hilda and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I'm not her, and I don't know these properties that well to go and tell somebody this is going to help heal you, or at least won't hurt to help. I've always seen myself more of a walker, and that's a walker between worlds. I love dealing with the dead. So I do really associate with that. I have seen myself as more of a counselor in the past rather than a healer. More of an advisor rather than a hands-on healer. So yeah, healer, not really a resonating term for me. I have seen myself as a walker. And in his definition, a witch is a walker between the worlds. So I do associate with that one. That one does ring for me. It's like, I love dealing with the dead. I am there for it. I am willing to be there for them, to get messages, to give messages, to help them. And I am one that is my comfort zone, is between the worlds. So finally, at the top of page 15, I want to do one last quote that jumped out to me. He says, and this is partially through the sentence, he says, "Many tribal traditions would not ever call themselves witches, but it is my personal feeling that such traditions are all practicing the same craft, regardless of the name, place, or time." So I think that's important to know. And this is part of what I've been saying for years, is that labels are for soup cans. You don't need to call yourself a witch in order to be practicing witchcraft. You don't have to identify with any of it or have any definition for it. You can just say, I dabble, I practice. And if people ask you what you practice, the moving of energies throughout the universe. You can say stuff like that. If you're not comfortable with the word witch, dig into it and ask yourself why. And if you're fine with the word witch, why? And I think digging into those terms a little bit, especially with this first chapter, are questions that we should ask ourselves from time to time. Hey, do I still call myself a witch? Why would I call myself that? If I'm constantly doing psychic readings, but I do very little actual witchcrafting, am I still willing to consider myself a witch? Or do I identify more as being a psychic? Or am I a psychic witch? So, terms are your own and for your own, and you come to those conclusions on your own. So, that's where I'm going to leave you with this first chapter. I'm hoping I can edit this down into some cohesiveness. What are your thoughts on the first chapter? I do have some questions here. Do you have any insights that I've missed that you wish to add? Do you agree or disagree on my insights? So share your thoughts in the discussion below. And remember, the 3 questions that I discussed at the beginning were: what is witchcraft to you? What is a witch? And what does it mean to become a witch? What is your definitions on the soup label, the soup can label that you're putting on yourself? Why do you pick those words? Do you pick them at all? And, what's the reasoning behind it? So I'm going to leave you guys with those questions. And join me next week for Chapter 2. Again, you can get your copy of Inner Temple Witchcraft. You can find it on Amazon and most major bookstores, but do shop locally if you can. The Little Witchy stores are the best places to get these. I got my copy from the Little Witchy store. Try to help out those small businesses whenever you can. I don't think I have anything else. Not for this week. Nope, don't think so. Anyway, I'm going to be doing Chapter 2 next Saturday, so if I get this one up a little bit late, I do apologize, because I did just get down here, and it's about almost 8:45 right now, and I want to be in bed by 10, so I can get up early in the morning. So if this does come up a little bit late tomorrow, I do apologize, but it should still be around Saturday or, whatnot, depending on your time zone. In the future, I'm hoping to get them up a lot quicker, or a lot more on time with being on Saturday. So anyway, thoughts, feelings, discussions, all that stuff, comments in the nether regions down below. Yeah, down below. Or for the extended written version of my notes, you can go to the Christo-Paganism.com blog, and again, in the bottom bar right here in my chesticle region, go there and leave a comment on there. If you're leaving a comment on the blog or to the blog, it's not going to show up immediately. I've had way too many spam things happening, and I put all comments on as needing approval. I think I'm able to do where if it's on the individual basis, I can set you to automatically approve. So if I have you commenting there and you don't see it immediately, that's why. But go ahead and leave comments here. Everything respectful. You can respectfully disagree with me. You can respectfully agree with me. It's even better. Strokes my ego. But that's all that I have for this week's Witchy Book Club with the Inner Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Penzak. So join me next week, and until next time, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye.